A report came out 2 days ago that, if it is true, reveals just how duplicitously hypocritical the Biden administration is being in terms of how it deals with the Israel-Hamas conflict, and also shows how deeply divided the administration is and the Democratic Party on the whole issue altogether. Wonder what I'm talking about? Hold on, folks. I'm going to explain everything here in just 1 second.
My name is Brian Trippett. I am your front porch conservative. Step on up to my electronic front porch and let's talk.
Folks, I was wondering if I could ask for your help. Number one, if you're not a subscriber to my channel, please do so. Number two, please leave a comment below. I would love to know what you think of this video and of my work in general. Number three, please hit the bell for notifications. I always want to make sure you're always aware when new material is coming out. Number four, please share the video around. And finally, please give me a thumbs up. And with that, on to the video. The Times of Israel dropped an article on November 30th about a meeting between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the members of the Israeli War Cabinet, and U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who we here on the electronic front porch affectionately refer to as Chip Diller. The reason being, he kind of reminds me of that Kevin Bacon character from National Lampoon's Animal House, who at the end of the movie is saying, "Everyone remain calm. Everything will be okay," as he's been steamrolled right over. But I digress. Anyway, a meeting goes down between all those parties, and excerpts of the meeting leak to the press. It's the contents of the leak that, if true, says a whole lot about how the United States is handling Israel in this matter of its war against Hamas. Let us go straight to the Times of Israel, and you'll begin to understand what I'm talking about. Headline: Blinken said to tell Israel to change strategy for southern Gaza, suggest it won't have months to win the war. Article written by unnamed art writer. According to leaked remarks from today's War Cabinet meeting attended by U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Blinken told Israel it cannot operate in southern Gaza in the way it has done in the north, a presumed reference to the heavy air bombardment and crushing ground operation, and indicated that Israel has weeks, not months, to complete its declared mission of destroying Hamas. The U.S. administration has repeatedly backed Israel's goal of eliminating Hamas in the wake of the terror group's October 7th slaughter of 1,200 Israelis, but has indicated that it is increasingly troubled by the civilian fatalities and widespread destruction in the Hamas-run Strip. Blinken's reported remarks are quoted only in Hebrew translation here by Channel 12 News and have been translated back into English here. And again, this is supposedly what was said. This is what's being reported to the Times of Israel. Blinken, quote, "You cannot operate in southern Gaza in the way you did in the north. There are 2 million Palestinians there. You need to evacuate fewer people from their homes, be more accurate in the attacks, not hit UN facilities, and ensure that there are enough protected areas for civilians. And if not, then not to attack where there is a civilian population. What is your system of operation?" IDF Chief Herzi Halevi, "We follow a number of principles: proportionality, distinction, and the laws of war. There were instances where we attacked on the basis of those principles and instances where we decided not to attack because we waited for a better opportunity." Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, "The entire Israeli society is united behind the goal of dismantling Hamas, even if it takes months." Blinken, "I don't think you have the credit for that." The secretary also reportedly pressed the cabinet over Israel's plans for a post-war Gaza. Blinken, you don't want the Palestinian Authority on the day after. We understand that. The best way to kill an idea is to bring a better idea. The other states in the region need to know what you are planning. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as long as I am sitting in this chair, the Palestinian Authority, which supports, educates, and finances terror, will not rule Gaza on the day after Hamas. And that is supposedly what was said. Okay, let's get into this. Now, a few things before we really get started. Number one, we do not know if this is actually what was said. This is what we are being told was said in this meeting. It is a report of a leak. So let's just be fair up front. We don't know if this is actually what was said. Number two, we don't know the motives behind the person who leaked this to Channel 12 in Israel and to the Times of Israel newspaper. What was the reason why they leaked it? Well, maybe it's to show the U.S.'s real face in this war. Maybe it's to undermine somehow Netanyahu and the Israel Defense Forces and the War Cabinet. Maybe it's to undermine the U.S. in general. Who knows what the motivations were? All we know is there's a report of this leaked text from the meeting, and that text is now out in the public ether. Now, as to whether or not Blinken actually said it, I take you to an exchange between Martha MacCallum of Fox News and John Kirby of the National Security Council. I want you to hear it from Kirby's own lips. So Martha MacCallum is going to press him on this question, and she will ask what everybody is thinking. Did you or did you not, or should say, did Blinken, or did he say this or did he not say it? Well, I'll let you hear John Kirby's response. Just one moment and take a listen.
Today, what does the Secretary of State mean by you don't have the credit for a months-long war, John?
Well, I certainly can't confirm the reports that he actually said that, and I wouldn't talk about private diplomatic conversations anyway, Martha. What I can tell you is President Biden has been clear, and Secretary Blinken too. We're going to continue to support Israel as they fight to defend themselves against a quite clearly genocidal threat posed by Hamas, and that security assistance to Israel, it's still flowing, even though right now we're in the pause has been lifted in the fighting, and we're not able to get humanitarian assistance in anywhere near the scope that we have.
Well, there's one other very important point about that. I can't confirm he said it, but then again, he's not denying it either. Now, I also think we need to try and put something in context here. I want to go back to Blinken's statement for just a second. A lot of people are getting bent out of shape about this, and I'm not going to lie, I'm one of them, but for maybe slightly different reasons. You have Yoav Gallant, who is the defense minister for Israel, says the entire Israeli society is unified behind the goal of dismantling Hamas, even if it takes months. Blinken says, I don't think you have the credit for that. Now, I'm going to assume some things here, maybe to the benefit of Secretary of State Blinken. When he says you don't have the credit for that, maybe he means credit with the Israeli people, that they're willing to accept a protracted war with Hamas that will take months. Maybe it means that they don't have the credit around the world in the eyes of the global community, that if they have to take that long to do it, they can. Who knows exactly what Blinken was thinking? I'm inclined to think he's referring to credit with the Israeli people. But laying aside exactly what Blinken meant or did not mean by it, I'd have serious problems if this is true, if this is what Anthony Blinken said to Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli War Cabinet, I have serious problems with this. And it basically comes down to this issue. Who the hell are we or anybody else around the world to tell the Israelis how they need to go about waging war in the defense of their nation? Excuse me, I don't seem to remember anybody coming to us and saying, hey, look now, you if you're going to go attacking Al-Qaeda over there in Afghanistan, you got to make sure that you guys, you're not hitting civilian targets and you're not hitting UN facilities and, you're making sure it's proportional and everything else. Oh, no. Everybody realized when it came to 9/11, get out of their way. The Americans are pissed off, and righteously and justifiably so. So if no one's going to tell us how we should have operated on 9/11 or the days thereafter when we attacked Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden and all of his fortifications, infrastructure, and everything else, who are we to tell the Israelis how they should go about waging war against Hamas? Number one, they're over there. Number two, they've been dealing with this enemy for decades. I'm sorry. I don't care if it's us. I don't care what nation it is. We don't have the right to tell the Israelis how to wage this war. Besides, I also want to address something else. Everybody keeps saying, "Oh, the civilians in Palestine." Okay, yes, there are probably civilians in Palestine who have nothing to do with this. If all they want to do is just live their lives, that's what they're trying to do. But may I ask a question of, all the hand-wringing inside the Democrats administration of Joe Biden? Do you guys not think that the Israelis realize that there are probably people who are there just trying to live their lives in the Gaza Strip? They don't want any part of Hamas. They don't want any part of this war. They're just trying to live, if not for themselves, for their children or their grandchildren or whomever it may be. They don't want this. But yet somehow, I guess some people, particularly some Democrats in this country, and maybe even some Republicans for that matter, assume that the Israelis are a bunch of bloodthirsty animals that want nothing more than to let slip the dogs of war and kill and destroy everything in sight, whether it's innocent or not. That's kind of a stupid assumption, don't you think? The Israelis know what they're going to get around the world in terms of universal condemnation if they go about slaughtering civilians who are otherwise innocent in this whole thing. I take the Israelis at their word. They're going to exercise proportionality. And like I said, who are we to tell the Israelis how they ought to fight this war? They know better than anybody else what they've got to do here. What everybody needs to do, in my humble estimation, is simply get out of the way and let them do it. But another aspect of this supposed conversation that happened that I find very interesting is that Blinken is trying to tell the Israelis they have a matter of weeks instead of months in order to sort this thing out. Now, I find the timing of that very curious, don't you? First of all, again, going back to my original comment, who are we to tell the Israelis how to wage this war? A caveat to that, who are we to tell them how long they have to wage the war? But the timing strikes me as interesting in that if Blinken's trying to get this thing, dusted under the rug in a matter of weeks, what happens, say 4 or 5 weeks from now here in the United States? Aren't we kicking off a presidential election campaign? See, I think Blinken's message to the Israelis isn't so much a concern about how long it takes them to win the war as much as it is a concern about, hey, if you guys don't get this thing under control, you could cost us our jobs here in Washington, D.C. And if you don't believe me, take a look at this. I show you an article from NPR ran a couple of weeks ago. Headline, Americans are split over Israel's response in its war with Hamas. Article written by Domenico Montano. We read the following. Americans are split over whether Israel's response has been too much or about right in response to Hamas's October 7th attack, with a majority of Democrats now saying it's been too much, according to the latest NPR PBS NewsHour Marist poll. The results were driven by people of color and younger respondents who were far more likely than others to say Israel has gone too far and said their sympathies lie more with the Palestinians than the Israelis. There are also clear divides on whether or not to fund both Israel and Ukraine wars or to fund neither, and whether the U.S. should take a leadership role in the world at all. Again, younger Americans and non-whites, as well as majorities of independents and Republicans, say the U.S. should focus more on its problems at home. Oh my, what is this? Now I think you begin to understand what I'm talking about. There is a very serious divide in the Democratic Party. On the one hand, you've got Joe Biden and supposedly the majority of his cabinet who are standing steadfast with Israel in light of the fact that they were attacked in an unprovoked manner by Hamas. And frankly, as far as I'm concerned, I don't care Democrat or Republican, I'll give Joe Biden credit for this. As far as I'm concerned, that's absolutely the right stand. But on the other hand, you have a significant portion of the Democratic Party, younger, more diverse, etc., whose loyalties and allegiances align more with the Palestinians and Hamas. And this is a political problem for Joe Biden. He cannot have a divided Democrat Party going into a general election fight against Donald Trump, who more than likely will be the Republican nominee, and the Republicans who are out for political blood to try to win the 2024 election. Biden's got enough problems politically in this campaign. He cannot afford to have the base of his party ripped in two over the question of Israel and Hamas. So hence you begin to understand, I think, the motivations behind some of Blinken's comments. Blinken realizes, as do most people inside Joe Biden's cabinet, they have got to get rid of this thing before it rolls into 2024. But I said a moment ago, who are we to tell the Israelis how to fight this war? They know what they're dealing with. Well, for folks out there who may have sympathies for Hamas or Palestinians supporting Hamas, let me show you exactly what the Israelis are dealing with. Take a look at this. You may have heard about a ceasefire that's currently going on in Israel right now. Well, that ceasefire didn't hold up very well. This is from a publication in Israel called Haaretz. 4 Israelis killed, 6 wounded in Jerusalem terror attack. Hamas claims responsibility. The shooting attack took place at a busy bus stop in Jerusalem's main entrance. The terrorists were from East Jerusalem. One of them had been imprisoned in Israel previously. And as if that were not enough, take a look at this. Again, this is from the Times of London. Israel and terror groups renew combat in Gaza. Hamas violated the ceasefire. Hamas fires rockets, fails to provide list of hostages to be freed, prompting the Israeli Defense Force to launch airstrikes, warns Khan Yunis residents to evacuate. Talks said ongoing, 137 held hostage. Ladies and gentlemen, the Israelis know exactly who they're fighting. They know what they're fighting, and they know what they're fighting for. How dare Anthony Blinken or any other diplomat around the world stroll into the Israeli war cabinet and tell them, hey, you got to get this thing wrapped up in a matter of weeks, and furthermore, you need to be more careful about who it is you're targeting. It is the height of arrogance. So, with all due respect to Secretary of State Chip Diller, shut up! Shut up and get out of there. Leave your political problems here at home. Don't go bringing them over to the Israelis. They're just trying to defend their homeland. But that's what I think about it. What do you think? As we start to wrap up this video, please do me some favors as always. Number 1, if you're not a subscriber to my channel, please do so. Number 2, please leave a comment below. I would love to know what you think about all this. Number 3, please hit the bell for notifications. I want to make sure you're always aware when new material is coming out. Number 4, please remember to share the video around. And finally, please give me a thumbs up. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your Front Porch Conservative, and I'll see you next time.